Are you guys dividing it up? Are you the one that's kind of doing the final assembly or what?
No. I put a floor plan together. We talked a little bit to Robert for some reason. I don't know if he's just not getting our messages or what. Tony's did a lot of research on it. We have a game plan on how we want to present it.
Okay.
It's just getting the information and putting it together. That's just been a little challenge. Like I said, a lot of information. A lot of information.
There,
and just organizing.
there is.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mark.
Hey, Robert, what's happening, man?
Hey, the reason I can't get back to you guys is because I can't do anything on my phone, and I only have a certain amount of time to be at this place where I'm at in the computer.
All good, man. We just didn't know if you were getting our messages or not. I thought maybe I had the wrong email, wrote it down wrong or something.
Oh, no.
I'm glad to hear you're getting it, though.
Yeah, I see him, and I'm getting them, but I just can't communicate because I don't have no way to do it unless I'm doing it on this computer.
Oh, okay. I'm sure Tony come on here in a minute.
Well, you know what we can do too is as we're getting closer, we're going to have some time that you guys will be able to spend working together on the project where everybody is in the group again. So it won't be today because today we have a lot to go through on the chemicals and also the rest of the supplies, but it'll likely be sometime on Monday and then as well next Thursday's class.
All right, sounds good.
Yep. And then Friday, after we finish up the portion next Friday with the guest speakers, then we will turn around and I'll have some time available as well. One of the things I'm hoping to do is next Thursday and then Friday, second half of the class, spend some time with you guys, literally going over them, seeing where you're at, what details do you still need help with, if any, and hoping you guys kind of wrap it all up by the following Monday. So,
right.
Yeah.
Like I said, I have it in my mind as far as what we need. It seems very simple, but it's just gathering it all together.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like when I'm starting to do it, it's like I'm doing write up one of these programs that you're doing. That's what it feels like. Which I know that's not what you want. So,
all right, let me get everybody's attendance in real quick, and then we'll get started.
Good morning.
Good morning, Tina. All right, so we've got cool. You guys are all in. Got everybody registered. So cool. All right. Well, today's class is going to be the class on the chemicals and supply. So I'm going to record today's lesson as well. And I do need to post this week's lessons. I'll get that done over the weekend. So you guys will have those available.
Recording in progress.
So before we get started with our lesson, just, congratulations. We've got another couple students who've completed. So as far as completed their testing, I've gotten notice that Archana and also Ken, I saw you got it all done. So good job. And then I'll be checking over the weekend to see where we're all at. And anybody that needs assistance, a reminder that I'll be available to help you guys out with testing questions or information following each of our classes over the next week and a half. So we're getting down to the end here, and today we get into the chemicals and supplies. And obviously supplies does cover chemicals. Of any area that we clean in a building, this is the area that uses the most chemicals, the most variety of chemicals as well. And so there's a lot of information here. Hopefully you guys had a chance to read over, or should have read over, the information on pages 105 all the way through to page 113, because it lists a lot of different products. And we want to go through these. And this is also where the application of the pH scale becomes most important, because we talk a lot about alkalines, acids, neutral pH chemicals. So, as you saw when we covered the information on carpet cleaning, carpet had a lot of different chemicals for spotting. This has a lot of different chemicals, but more of these are used more frequently. So that's what we will discuss and go through, as well as all the supplies that are used in the restroom. You think about it, there's a lot of paper supplies and plastic goods and things that need to be stocked. And, as we mentioned at the beginning of this lesson, two of the biggest complaints that occur in a building are associated with restrooms. One is the cleanliness, but the other is in relation to the stocking of supplies. You think about it, the last thing you want if you are going in to use a restroom is to walk into a stall and there's no toilet paper or seat covers, or you go to use a public restroom and there's no hand soap to wash your hands. Those things become a big area of complaint by both the public and all the occupants of that building. So from that standpoint, we want to make sure that we get those things. A lot of times I will tell people that as they're beginning, make a checklist, have a list of what the supplies are that you're using. One of the things you may have noticed is in the details that I posted as far as that checklist on restroom cleaning or on overall cleaning, it had a list of the chemicals, equipment, materials, but it didn't list all the supplies, all the paper goods. And that would be a good idea for somebody to do if they were cleaning a restroom, is have that list of all the supplies that they might use. So as we go through this today, as I mentioned, I would like this to be a little bit more Q&A. You guys have been in this class now. We're getting to the end. You should have read the information and can help provide some of the answers. So do me a favor, use your button at the bottom under the reactions. If you'll notice on the bottom of your screen where you can click on reactions, you'll see raise hand. So use that to raise your hand as we ask questions. So, and one of the things as we begin talking about supplies, it's your responsibility as the custodian to monitor the use of all the supplies. Make sure that you're placing orders with your supervisors if you're starting to run low. The last thing you want to do is wait until you run out to place an order. So those things will help you just to have that list of what products that you need to keep on hand. Archina, did you have a comment? You have to unmute yourself, Archina. Okay. So let me ask you, in relation to chemicals, well, the first chemical that was listed in our book is a multi-purpose cleaner. What pH is a multi-purpose cleaner? What do we think of when we think of a multi-purpose cleaner? Ken?
Neutral, closest to 7.
Yep, exactly. And are neutral cleaners good for removing of hard water stains?
Sorry.
Nelson, I'll call on you.
No.
Nope. Why not?
Because they don't have that.
You're muted again, Nelson. They don't have what? You're muted again. You keep hitting the space bar, buddy. There you go.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I was saying it don't have the acid to remove the hard water.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. And as we've learned, we want to use something that is acidic when we're trying to remove that calcium or magnesium off a surface. Now, the other thing it mentioned about multi-purpose cleaners is that they, generally speaking, are not disinfectants. If they are, they have to be combined with something as a disinfectant. So a lot of times, if you're going to use two separate products, you might use a multi-surface cleaner on a microfiber rag to go ahead and do general purpose cleaning and wiping, and then spray a disinfectant down after you've cleaned. That's part of that two-step process of disinfecting. So from that standpoint, multi-surface cleaners are great because of the fact that you can use them on surfaces like glass, countertops, mopping of floors maybe. So from that standpoint, they have a wide variety of use. We'll talk a little bit more about what's called a non-acid bathroom cleaner, which is also more of a multi-surface restroom cleaner. It's typically going to have a pH between 6 and 8. So that product we'll talk about a little bit further along here. The next one we talk about, okay, going on the acidic side is acids. And it mentioned a few different types of acids. Who can help me with some of the different types of acid that we might see in restroom cleaning?
Is it sulfuric acid
Yep, that is one of them.
and muriatic?
Uh-huh. And there's two more.
Hydrochloric acid
Yep.
and phosphoric acid.
Yes, exactly. Now, just a little bit about these. Sulfuric acids are typically used as drain openers. Muriatic acid isn't used a lot anymore in restroom cleaning. If it is, it would be used more as a drain opener. So you want to be careful when you're working with them. Obviously, wearing safety goggles, possibly a work apron if you're worried about it splashing back. Obviously, rubber gloves and other personal protective equipment. Sometimes acids are so strong that the odors from them can make you sick. So from that standpoint, also using it in a well-ventilated area and using a proper respirator if needed. Something to be aware of, most of the acids that we use in restroom cleaning for toilet bowl cleaners, for example, that we kind of transition into, are typically like phosphoric acid or hydrochloric. And it's an interesting thing. If you go into a janitorial supply store and you start to look at their acid cleaners, most of the time you're going to see them in quart bottle size. You won't find a lot of them in gallons. But if you do, you also want to pay attention to what kind of acid. Is it a phosphoric, or is it a hydrochloric or a hydrofluoric? Those acids, I've done some testing, and just a perfect example, we know that they attack minerals. So if you were to spill an acid on concrete, guess what it's going to do to the concrete? It'll etch it. It'll remove the cream of it. And the stronger acids, like a hydrochloric or a hydrofluoric acid, are so strong that they'll do it almost immediately. You'll see that it'll start to foam or effervesce, and you'll see it attacking the minerals in the concrete, and it'll take it from a smooth piece of concrete to a rough piece of concrete almost instantly with those acids. Funny story, when I was probably about 17 or 18, my parents had a condo that we lived in, and part of the homeowners association there had a big issue about not having rust stains in the driveways. So the suggestion was to use an acidic cleaner to remove the rust stains, which is appropriate, right? We know we use acids for rust stains. But the Homeowners Association hadn't done enough research to know that what kind of acidic cleaners should be used on that. And as a result, they were recommending a lot of times muriatic acid. Well, muriatic acid is what you see a lot of times used in swimming pools for being able to reduce the alkalinity. It's such a strong acid. We used it on our driveway and poured it on some of the stains. And my dad, again, not knowing about the chemicals, not being educated on it, that acid within just a few days had eaten through the top cream, and it ate a hole all the way through a 4-inch slab of concrete. That's how strong it is. It wasn't neutralized. And, we knew to wear gloves with it because it was dangerous. But, here's a product they said, we want to get rid of the rust stains. Well, yeah, they got rid of the rust stains. They also got rid of the concrete. So you got to be careful what you're using it for. So obviously being careful when it comes to that. A couple safety points in relation to working with acids. First of all, mixing of acids and other chemicals can have a violent reaction that can cause somebody to get hurt, because acids tend to quickly react with things. And as a result, you can get splash and cause damage, cause burns to your skin. The other thing in relation to that is not using drain cleaners in a clogged drain unless you have knowledge where you know what you're dealing with. Acid cleaners are typical of use for drain cleaners, but from that standpoint, you need to be very careful. So we'll address that here. And I'm going to jump around a little bit on the chemicals because I want to jump over to this issue of drain cleaners. One of the questions on your test has to deal with drain cleaners. And acid drain cleaners do a good job of dissolving blockages, and they work very quickly. However, you do not use them to open up a completely clogged drain. If you have a completely clogged drain, then it's a good idea to use a mechanical method, like what they call a snake, that will open it up. Because if you're using a chemical, what'll happen is it's not going to be able to get all the way through that clog, and you're going to waste product. So, and it could react with something, because if you used an acid drain opener and somebody else used something, other chemical in there, it's sitting in that clog, and that's where the reaction can occur. The other thing about drain openers, and in particular acid drain openers, you'll never want to use a sulfuric acid for cleaning of drains in a sink, especially like an enamel sink or a drinking fountain. And the reason being is that they can damage the surface. And as well on a drinking fountain, imagine that sitting in a much smaller trap of a drain. And as a result, it could react and cause a splash for the person using it if it wasn't rinsed out thoroughly. And we never want that to happen, where somebody would get injured from using that. So a lot of times a safer method for drain openers is enzyme drain openers. Schools, this is more typical to use, is an enzyme. They're not as harsh as an acid. They do open up clogs, but they will not open up a completely clogged drain. Enzymes, though, do a good job of breaking down organic matter, which about 90% of the drain clogs are caused by that. Soaps, biological material, and things like that. So enzymes work, but they work much slower. Acids work quickly. Enzymes are slower, but they're safer to use. So just something to be aware of. Now, the other type of acid we use is, we mentioned about the phosphoric or hydrochloric acids. A lot of the times these are used as toilet bowl cleaners. And they're very good for being able to clean toilets. But as we mentioned, we wouldn't want to use a bowl cleaner on a sink or a drinking fountain, as they can remove the finish on it. Should we use a bowl cleaner every day? Robert, I see you shaking your head. Why not?
Contains the acid.
Say that again.
It contains the acid.
Yep, it has acid in it, and typically because of that, it's not designed for everyday use. It's really just to remove those mineral deposits. So, Nelson, your comment.
My comment with the going back to the school. All right, so the problem I'm running against is that teachers are pouring coffee as liquid, but another thing is the what is, because I don't drink coffee, the grain of the coffee.
Yep, coffee grounds.
Yes. So they pouring some of that in the sink and hoping that the water will dissolve, but what it do, it build up over time.
Mm-hmm. So
And
enzymes work really well for that, Nelson, because coffee grounds are still organic in nature, but where they'll build up is, just from a plumbing standpoint, is every drain has a P-trap. Okay, P-trap is just a little elbow. And why they have a P-trap is a very simple reason. It's to prevent odors coming back from the sewer line. So what'll happen is the P-trap is supposed to have fluid water typically sitting in there that keeps a blockage so that the odor is not coming through the line from that sewer odor. And where this becomes a problem is because of that trap. This is also where that organic matters like coffee grounds. That's a good point of those. If any other food debris is put into a drain, it could cause a problem. Even if you have let's say, a sink that has a garbage disposal, you want to make sure that it is flushed out and ran with lots of water, because the garbage disposal is going to grind it up and force it out a little bit better, but it still can get, if you're using things like potatoes or things like that, those build up and can create a problem. So you're absolutely right. And the good solution, if you know you have a problem with a school that's doing that, one is communication with them, but number two, might be a maintenance program of using enzymes about once a week. Best time to put enzymes in a drain, by the way, is on Fridays at the end of your shift. Put enough down the drain so it stays moist and allows it to work, because enzymes work very slowly, but it gives them a whole weekend to work. So just some ideas for that.
thank you.
Mark, your question.
Yeah, as far as the acid goes and drains and bowl cleaners and whatnot, how do you know if a building is on a septic tank or not? Because I guess too much acid affects the septic tank with the enzymes, bacteria that's in it.
Generally speaking, you're going to see a septic tank system more in the country. And that's where the building managers should be aware of that and make the custodial staff aware that they're on a septic system. So some of the country buildings, you'll have that. Whereas in town, they're typically hooked up to the city sewer system. A lot of times, just a real simple, basic thing. If you have sidewalks in the area, you probably also have city sewer where it's connected. Whereas if you don't have sidewalks, it's out in the country, it's a good rule of thumb that you're probably also on a septic system. So it kind of is a helpful thing. Tony.
So you're on your shift and there's a major blockage. There's water all over the restroom floor. Just throw signs, block off the doorway, call your supervisor.
Pick up the water, but yes, shut that restroom down. And now here's a rule of thumb. If there is biological matter in there, then now you are no longer, you want to shut it down and call your supervisor and let them direct how that's going to be cleaned up. Because now you're dealing with, the potential for bloodborne pathogens or other things if there's biological material like feces present. Generally speaking, most flooding in a restroom is just going to be water overflow where, for some reason that caused that, and it's just really going to be water. So it can be sucked up with a wet, dry vacuum. I rarely see anything that bad. Now, I will tell you, this is kind of give you some worst case scenarios as we talk about restrooms. I more commonly see in public restrooms, especially in closer into town, where you have perhaps a lot of times more homeless or vagrants using the restrooms, that they'll go in and use them as a bathing area. And so you'll get a lot of stuff on the floors and walls, a lot of water and things along those lines. You may also run into people who are dealing with some mental health issues that will take feces and put on walls and things along those lines. If you're dealing with that, good, safe practice is now you want to glove up and you want to wear more PPE and you want to have the right equipment. And any equipment you use in that regard would need to be cleaned and sanitized at the end of a use of it so that you're not, transporting pathogens and so forth. So, but Tony, you nailed it. Shut it down, call your supervisor and wait for instruction. Don't let it be used.
Yeah, I want to say something. Working in the airport, sometimes it's hard to shut a restroom down and you got people just bursting in there. Doesn't matter if the floor's wet, kayak's out, everything's out. They're going to use the restroom. And we were told to just leave the signs up and let them use it.
Yeah. You don't need to cause any issue.
Right.
But, you do the best you can. And there are some areas, bus stations, things like that. If people go past the signs, not a whole lot you can do about it.
Right.
And a lot of times I would recommend, in particular, that you may have to shut down a restroom because you have a problem, but that problem may be isolated to a particular stall. So you may be able to shut down just the stall without having to shut down the entire restroom. Yes, Mark.
And you're speaking of like feces and whatnot spread across. When it comes down to blood and those matters of that, and cleaning a bathroom, is blood taken care of first before anything else?
Yes.
So that would say as far as feces go as well and other bodily fluids?
So if we suspect that we have that, then we would want to treat it as if there was bloodborne pathogen, which then we would use bloodborne pathogen policies, which would involve, obviously wearing gloves, face mask, picking up the material, scooping it up, putting it into a biohazard bag, and then cleaning it and disposing properly of any materials and cleaning the materials that you used with it. Like, so if you used a plastic scoop or dustpan, you'd want to clean that afterwards. But yes, following the bloodborne pathogen rules that we discussed early on in chapter 2.
Right. That's what I was kind of referring to. So.
Yep, absolutely. Yep. If that's always the first thing you would deal with when you enter an area. If you see that, everything else stops until that's dealt with. So, Tony, go ahead, and then we'll move on with some of the acids.
I just wanted to hit something in regards to, let's say, like you're doing an elementary school, first day of school, kids are nervous, they're throwing up everywhere. What do you use to actually suck up some of that moisture so that you can maybe sweep that up? You're not touching that stuff.
So I'm going to call on Christina. I know Nelson knows, but Christina, you've dealt with this as well. What is the product that you use?
I don't know the name of it. It's like a little, it's a powder.
Mm-hmm.
It's an absorbent.
Yep.
But it just pretty much clumps the mess up. Kind of
Is that similar to like BioFresh?
So there's a lot of different names, but it's basically like a kitty litter kind of material. You can get it in more powdery or more coarse. And it does exactly what Christine is saying. it basically helps it to absorb the material, and then at the same time, once it's dry, you can scoop it up and dispose of, and then clean the area with an all-purpose carpet spotter. A lot of times a great product for that exact. So Tony, you gave us an exact circumstance, and my process would be to use the absorbent powder, sprinkle it on. Now, unless it is where you see blood, you do not have to treat vomit as a biohazard, okay, or a bloodborne pathogen, because we're not necessarily seeing it. It is, yes, it's something they're throwing up out of their stomach, but a lot of times with kids, it's, either nervousness, especially in the younger grade levels, or you might have to deal with the fact that they're sick. A hydrogen peroxide cleaner works exceptionally well because it will sanitize. Remember, carpet we can't disinfect because it's three-dimensional, but hydrogen peroxide cleaners will sanitize, plus they break down organic matter real well, and that way it won't stain. So simple couple steps: absorbent powder, let it dry, scoop it up and dispose of it, and then use a process of hydrogen peroxide, spotter, and then rinse it.
So just a final on all these disinfectants and everything that's in that supply room. When you start your day to stock that cart, or most of these schools, they're probably going to have that dispensing system and use probably a line like Hilliard or something to that nature, where there's a 4-step process. You use this for floors, this for bathrooms, this for surfaces.
Yeah, and if you worked, for example, at Elk Grove School District, they're using one product.
Okay.
And that is the aqueous ozone, which is a multi-purpose cleaner. Now, what that one product won't do is it's not going to absorb the vomit. So you may have a couple specialty things in their supply closet, like an absorbent. And I'll ask Nelson and Christina, do you guys have absorbent powders in your supply closets?
Yes.
Yeah, usually they do. I'm in the maintenance, so I don't
Right.
really deal with that anymore. But yeah, they usually do. And if not, you can ask, or it's in the lead's office.
Perfect. Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And, to what you're saying, Tony, generally speaking, when you're dealing with a district, Elk Grove is probably more cutting edge when it comes to the use of more green chemicals. A lot of school districts are still a little bit more traditional with the blend systems that have about 4 different chemicals. And you'll, generally speaking, have a glass cleaner, a neutral floor cleaner, a disinfectant, and then you may have a 4th product that could be, any one of a number of things, like a degreaser. A lot of schools have gone to using about 3 products, and that's, I see the most common is an all-purpose cleaner, a disinfectant cleaner, and then maybe a floor cleaner. So, but these other products, like we mentioned about the acids will not be run through a chemical dispensing system. They're typically going to be used ready to use. If they are in a concentrate, you would need to mix it. So, because it's not meant for daily use. Okay. And just a couple more safety things about it. If we're using a bowl cleaner, an acid bowl cleaner, we want to also be careful that we don't spill it on carpet. So we mentioned not on concrete, because it'll damage concrete. On carpets, one of the things it'll do is it will cause it to discolor. And here's why. The color that they use when they dye a carpet, they will set it with an acid. Okay. So it runs through an acid bath to cause that. But then the challenge is, if you use a strong acid that has a lower pH than the acid that was used in dyeing of the carpet, guess what? You open up the dye sites and you allow the color to escape, and you'll get discoloration. So that's why you have to be very careful with regards to acids, even on the synthetic carpets like nylon. They still are a dyed fiber. So, okay. And lastly, about acids, the best way to apply them is using a bowl mop, or as it says here, a bowl swab. Again, same, it's an interchangeable term, but those bowl mops are great for applying of the acids, so that you're not getting it on your skin. It's away from your hand as you're applying it, and do it over the drain. A technique I've used, and I will actually do, I don't have a bowl swab at my house. I have a bowl brush, but I'll show you a technique next week where you could take the bowl swab, use it as a plunger. So when we go through the process on Monday, I'll kind of go through this with you, but you can use it as a plunger to force the water down the trap in the toilet itself. That way the water is below that ring in the toilet. Then you would wring it out a little bit so that you have where you can put your bowl cleaner on it, put the bowl cleaner on the swab, and then apply it. So it's a great method to use for applying it. So we may even end up using my restroom as a video for you guys. So, okay. Moving on to disinfectants. All right. One of the things it talked about on our disinfectants is that it should have a EPA registration number. Why do you guys think that's important? What does an EPA registration number tell you?
That it's safe.
That it's safe. What else?
That it meets the government standards for
That meets
disinfecting.
Yep, absolutely. Especially right now, that's important, right? Because we want to make sure if we say that we're going to be able to get rid of COVID-19 and we're claiming it, we should be able to back it up. And that's where the EPA backs it up, because they do testing, or they provide the testing requirements for the manufacturer. Here's an interesting point too. A disinfectant, right? And we talk about in this chapter, it reviews a lot of the information from lesson 2 about the different types, the things such as iodophores, hypochlorite, hydrogen peroxide, quats, right? Disinfectants do not have cleaning properties typically. They can actually lose their ability to clean when they encounter soils, or their ability to work. So for them to work as a cleaner disinfectant, they have to be combined with a detergent. So you want to pay attention to your disinfectant itself. Is it a cleaner disinfectant, or is it a true disinfectant only? And in a healthcare environment, you will see this far more common, that you're using in patient rooms, typically a cleaner / disinfectant, but in extreme areas such as in cleaning of surgery rooms or specialty areas, you may find it is a pure cleaner and then a disinfectant. And the cleaner may be a hydrogen peroxide based cleaner. And then you might find that you have a disinfectant that's either a quat or a hypochlorite disinfectant, because of their ability to kill a lot. In the healthcare environment, I'll address a disease that is very common in care homes. Okay, it is called C. diff. C. diff is a virus that is transmitted and attacks the bowels of your stomach. Okay, because that's where you get into and create stomach issues for a person that makes them extremely ill. C. diff is something that you will find transmitted through feces. Now, in a care home, this becomes an issue because you may have incontinent individuals who are in a care home where they're having to have adult diapers that need to be changed. They may need to be bathed in a room where they're taken in a chair and bathed because they can't get into a bathtub or a shower without falling. So they're taken there. And as a result, those areas, whether it's in their patient room or their room or in the restroom shower room areas, are the two common areas where C. diff could be transmitted. The only effective chemical to kill C. diff is a hypochlorite solution, bleach. Okay. And the reason being, C. diff, the actual virus, is got a very hard outer shell that is very difficult to kill. It's just like COVID's a little bit more difficult to kill. C. diff's even more difficult to kill, so it can spread. And what you will have happen is, in a care home that is not properly cleaned and maintained, you can see a situation occur where people get sick and it spreads throughout a facility very easily. And the people who end up spreading it can be the caregivers themselves if they're not using proper sanitation and safe procedures. Now, in the last 10 years, we've gotten much better about this. But if we go back 15 years ago, we saw a lot of viruses and infections that were spread in a care home. And we call those the HAIs, right? Healthcare acquired infections. And so from the standpoint of proper disinfecting, it's really critical that we understand the type of environment we're dealing with and then are using the appropriate disinfectant for that. C. diff is not nearly the issue in a school area because it typically attacks and is an issue for those who are elderly. Little children don't typically have this issue. So just those are things that we have to be aware of. Know your environment so you can know the right product to use. All right, now we move from disinfectants over to talking about, we were already discussed drain openers, so I'll move over to window and glass cleaners. Now, this particular lesson dealt a little bit more with windows. We talked some about it in our last lesson when we were talking the above floors. Remember, there is glass that is not truly glass. We call it plexiglass, right? It's made out of plastics. And as such, they're softer than traditional glass and can be easily scratched. So from that standpoint, glass cleaners, we have to be careful that we're not using it to harm or on a surface that would possibly scratch it. And the other thing to be aware of is that glass cleaners themselves contain drying agents. What is a drying agent? What do you guys think of when you think of drying agent?
Maybe stop some streaking.
Stop streaking. Yep. What else? Well, if a chemical dries faster, wouldn't you think it would also leave less residue? Right? So part of that is some of the drying agents would be things like ammonia or alcohol. And, if you go back years ago, Windex used to sell their glass cleaner with ammonia D, is what they would call it. And it was because the glass cleaner would dry very quickly. And that's what you want with glass cleaner. You don't want to leave it where it'll have streaks on it because it's going to leave that detergent there. So they will add drying agents to it. You have to be careful, though, because sometimes those drying agents can damage plexiglass. So a lot of times you want to be careful on the type of glass cleaner to make sure it is safe to use on plexiglass. What else? Metal polishes. We've already discussed a lot about metal polishes in the lesson on above floors. We talked about the use of metal polishes on different fixtures. Big thing I go back to when it comes to metal polishes is use them appropriately. Use them on the surface that they're meant to be used on. And typically apply it to your rag. Don't apply it directly on the surface because otherwise you could get overspray. And that overspray could cause leaving a residue that's an oil on a floor that could cause a slip and fall. So Now, deodorizers. This was a fun part of the lesson because we did not talk about deodorizers when we dealt with the issue of above floor cleaning, or we talked about chemicals. There are 3 different deodorizers our book talks about. Who can help me with? Just give me one. Ken.
Destroyers.
Destroyers. What do destroyers do, Ken?
They burst the odor molecules on contact.
Okay. Give me another one, somebody. Antonio.
Maskers
And what do they do, Tony?
cover odors, but do not destroy them.
Okay. And then there's a third one. Somebody who has not commented yet.
Distorters.
All right, Robert, thank you. What does a distorter do, Robert?
Change odor molecules so that people can no longer smell them.
Yep. So when we think about deodorizers, first of all, you have to understand where we might use them. Obviously, we think of restrooms because restrooms is where the most foul odors are going to occur, whether it's occurring right there in the stalls in the restroom, or possibly because urine is present where, like in a school, kids being on the floors, public restroom like a gas station, you'll get urine on surfaces. So let me ask you thank you, Ken. Page 109 answers that question. The different deodorizers that we're talking about, if you were dealing with urine, which one of those 3 would you think would be the right one to use? Would it be a masker, a destroyer, or a distorter? Come on, people. I've had several of you who are already commenting. Some of the ones who are not answering.
A destroyer.
Yep.
Destroyer.
Thank you, a destroyer. You want to get rid of it, right? You want to break it down immediately. So from that standpoint, that deodorizer might be built into the cleaning product itself. You might find that if you have a restroom cleaner that cleans and deodorizes, it's designed to destroy that. In comparison, if you are dealing with maybe something that, like you put and mentioned potpourri, or you were to put a sprayed deodorizer into a restroom, those are more maskers. They are designed so that they cover over the odor, doesn't actually attack it. It just gives us a different thing to smell that's stronger than the malodor. And then the distorter, those are some of the more powerful ones that are in aerosol form. And what they do is they attach themselves to the odor molecule and change it so that people can no longer smell it. Now, our book mentions one other thing, and it is a false statement. Not our book, our testing is a mutator. There's nothing here about a mutator. We can't mutate the odor molecule and cause it to fall to the ground. That doesn't happen. But what it does do in distorting it, that odor molecule is so light, it's not like it's something that's going to fall to the ground, but it just distorts it in the air so that we don't have to smell it. Before I call on you, Tony, I'm going to make this statement. My favorite smell in a restroom is nothing. The perfect smell, clean smell, is nothing. I don't want to smell something. So if I walk into a restroom and I'm smelling a deodorizer, my first thought as a cleaning professional, what are you trying to cover up? Okay. Now, that being said, if I was working in an airport or I was working in a restroom that has lots of traffic, I absolutely want to walk in and smell something, because there's too many people coming and going in that restroom that you to keep on top of it. So there, I would want to mask those smells, because people are going to come in and they're going to have malodors that occur, and they're going to leave it smelling funky. So being able to address that and have a spray. But if you do that, a couple rules of thumb: make sure it's put in an area where it's going to dispense properly. One, it should never dispense onto people, so it needs to be high enough up. It also shouldn't be put in an area where it's being sucked up into the air vent and they get no benefit. Best place is where there is airflow, where it's going out into the restroom. So
Basically, in high traffic areas,
Yes.
you want to smell there. You want a deodorizer to smell.
Yes,
But
exactly.
basically an office building, you want no smell, basically. You rule of thumb, basically.
Exactly. A neutral smell is a great smell. And here's another problem with deodorizers. Okay. We have 11 of you in this class. So I'm going to ask the question this way. I get everybody to comment. And I'll start with Eduardo, because you're pretty good at helping with this. Eduardo, what's your favorite smell?
It depends. I have many.
Okay. If you were to say maybe for a restroom deodorizer, what would you put in there for your scent that you think is not, that is very pleasing?
I'm not sure, like something like pine sol, but not too strong.
Okay. So a pine smell. Okay. Christina, how about you? What would be a scent you would think would be pleasing?
Either a lemon or a lavender smell.
Okay. And I guarantee you, if I go through this with every one of you, you all are going to give me a different smell. Now, interestingly enough, Christina, you mentioned lavender, and it's the one I was hoping to hear from. A lot of people like lavender. I like the smell of lavender. There are just as many people who don't like it. Eduardo mentioned pine. As many people who like pine absolutely hate the smell of pine. I personally hate the smell of pine cleaner. I don't want to smell a forest when I walk into a room. But for many, that's what they equate clean as. Robert, how about you?
I love the kaibui,
Okay.
which smelled like bubblegum.
Okay. And again, you like that one. Tyler may hate bubblegum. It might give him some real weird memories of childhood that's not a pleasant memory. So the point is, this is the challenge when it comes to deodorizers. And it's funny because it's been a number of years ago, I had the experience of working, and keep in mind, guys, I worked in the supply part of the business for a number of years. I was working with a supplier, and we had a vendor come in, and it actually, anybody familiar with who Vidal Sassoon is?
Yes, I am. I'm a little
All right.
older though. And my grandma has a salon, so those two go
Right.
hand in hand.
Well, Vidal Sassoon, who lived in Southern California, I don't think he's still alive, but his nephew got into the business of creating deodorizers. He made some amazing, his company developed some amazing deodorizers that were made from essential oils. Okay, which essential oils means it was taken from an extract, like a plant extract, or directly from lemon peels, the oils from the lemon, or from rose petals, the oils from that. So they were very natural. They didn't smell synthetic like a lot of deodorizers do. Amazing scents. I mean, literally some of the best scents that I had ever smelled. And he gave us this kit to go out and show it to our clients. It says, let them choose this to figure out what scent they want. And it is amazing how many people got headaches from smelling these essential oils, because they're like, oh no, that give me a headache. The variety of complaints. And what I came to realize I already knew from myself that I was not a big fan of these and of deodorizers because I don't like to mask a smell. And the more I become a trainer, the more I've been a consultant in the industry, I realize it's a lazy way of covering up of poor cleaning, especially by building management. So it was an interesting lesson, but it was finding out how many people literally hated as much of these scents as the few that said, oh, I like this one or I like that one. It evoked a very strong response from people. So from that standpoint, when it comes to deodorizers, my advice, try and use the thing that is the least noticeable. The one that is the more neutral, if at all possible, when it comes to deodorizing, because the stronger, the more powerful the fragrance, the more it's going to evoke a response that may not be what you're looking for. So you go into a restroom and you smell real strong lavender, which I may like, but Alex may not like. We have to be aware of that. So
Similar to being around people in a crowded area and someone just poured cologne literally all over their front side, and you're
yes,
like,
sir.
Wow, that's pretty deep.
You nailed it. That's exactly it, Tony. Okay. So, just that helps us to a little bit understand when it comes to deodorizers. Now, we've talked about the use of acids for dealing with mineral deposits. One last thing I will address is acids, keep in mind, going back to them, can come in both liquid and powder forms. If it's in a powder form, it doesn't become active until it's combined with some water or moisture. A lot of times those powdered acidic cleaners are really good on surfaces such as a fiberglass tub or an area where you need a little bit of that. And if you remember the abrasive cleaners we talked about in lesson 2, okay, we said that abrasive cleaners could come in the form of lotions or powders. We think of maybe Comet or Ajax as a powdered cleanser. Okay. Those powdered cleansers you can get, especially in the paste style or the soft scrub, I would say is a perfect example of the type that's more of a cream. Those can have an acidic base to it and are really good at getting rid of mineral deposits because it'll sit on the surface and it usually has some scouring agent in it that will help, some sort of either pumice or something along those lines, that when you work with those solutions, the abrasives, they work exceptionally well, especially when combined with a little bit of acidity. So, okay, so we transition now. That's the overall chemicals we would use. We transition into the supplies that are used in a restroom. So why don't you guys help me? Tell me what are some of the supplies we might use in a restroom? Commodities, as it were.
Toilet paper, paper
Toilet
towels, soap.
Robert, let's let other people. Ken, we got a couple more.
Sorry.
Covers,
No worries.
seat covers.
Christina, thank you. Seat covers. I have an interesting story about seat covers. You guys know me and my stories. Did you know that seat covers was a West Coast thing? And it is predominantly only used in the United States. Most other countries do not use seat covers.
Why is?
Because
Yeah. In my country, not use seat covers.
correct. Now, I couldn't tell you why, but I will tell you why that it became a West Coast thing. What do you think is based on the West Coast? Paper companies. And it was developed by the paper companies a number of years ago as a product to be able to sell another item into restrooms. And it also was designed with the idea of obviously providing a layer of sanitation, right? Sitting on a clean toilet seat every time you use a seat cover. So they were developed here on the West Coast. They have spread across the United States, but they're not as commonly used on the East Coast as it is the West, and absolutely not commonly used outside the US. Nelson.
I know. It's been a couple of years, around about 3 years. I was going to back on DC, and in the airport they have automatic plastic rotation on the seat.
Yeah. Yep.
So why instead of paper, why do you use plastic?
So the reason the companies did that is it had to do with how the thing would dispense. I remember when that came out, and the problem they had is creating a way of a paper seat cover dispensing out and doing that didn't work real well. But plastic, it could feed around, and it would feed around the seat cover, and it worked really well. It was just a new, innovative, kind of creative way. Mark.
You know, I saw a news segment a while ago, and they were touching about the cleanliness of this and that. I forget what the subject was about, but they touched on these covers, and they said it wasn't very effective, even though I pile it on down when you got to go, but yet they say it's not very effective.
Yeah, it's a false sense of security. The reality is, if it's me using a public restroom, and you can use a disinfectant wipe down the surface, and then use the seat. But obviously if I were to create a product for a restroom, especially in this modern day and age where we're at, I would put some sort of disinfectant wipes on the door in the stall with a little can there, so somebody could pull a disinfectant wipe the seat, and be able to do it and make it a flushable. Is it difficult? Yes, because obviously one of the biggest problems is the disinfectant you need a stronger type of wiper to be able to hold that, and typically those aren't real flushable. So it's not an easy solution.
You need set time as well, and it may affect the a person's skin. There's a reaction.
Exactly. Yep.
How effective is alcohol?
Alcohol is a good, effective sanitizer.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not a disinfectant, but it is a sanitizer.
All right.
And Ken, your comment in the chat, you're exactly right. West Coast, we tend to be the little bit more green, a little bit more hippie-ish, right? And so people tend to be a little bit more of worried about germs and bacteria and so forth. And especially in some of the more greener cities, which is funny because typically I find most green cities are also probably the smelliest of cities, because as green as they also allow a lot of things that are not real good for our environment. So that gets into a political thing that I'll stay away from for the rest of this. But let's go back to the supplies. So we mentioned seat covers. We mentioned toilet paper, right? Toilet paper, by the way, comes in a couple different ways. You will find it in dispensers where the rolls are stacked on top of each other. But there's another style that is very common as well. We call those jumbo rolls, okay? And the reason those were developed was really from the standpoint of never running out of paper. One of the things that the manufacturers of toilet paper found out is that they can make a roll and put it, instead of how many sheets of tissue, it was how many feet of tissue. And those will range typically about 1,000 feet on a roll of toilet paper. That's a lot of toilet paper. It's not designed to be your cottonelle plush toilet paper that you would use at home. It's a convenience for a public restroom. So from that standpoint, they're not trying to provide the high-end quality. They're simply trying to provide a product so it's gives you something to use. But the key to those jumbo roll tissue dispensers was that you would never run out of toilet paper in that dispenser. And that's a big contrast to something I saw early on in my career that I found was the most hilarious thing. If anybody has gone into an old public building, okay, they're not hardly even around anymore. Way back when, in an effort to control how much toilet paper people used, and more importantly, control the amount of time, they used to make tissue squares. So it was a little box. Yep. Can you remember it? Square sheets.
I remember that.
And you would pull it out and you get one sheet. So you can imagine you didn't like to use those restrooms too often if you had to grab a sheet. And they would stack them, and the stack was only about that big. So a lot of times you'd run into that restroom and there wasn't enough tissue, or that it would had run out. And just like with folded towels, you get down to the last chunk of tissue and it'd fall out of the dispenser. So it wasn't the wisest of things, but it was an effort to control how much time people were spending in a restroom, as well as quality. You absolutely do, Ken. All right. So toilet tissue. The other thing is hand towels. And hand towels have changed a lot as well. Back in the day, we started out with folded hand towels. And if you go way back, it's one of the most unhygienic thing is something that was called a towel that was a cloth towel on a roll. Mark, you're shaking your head. You remember those, huh, in the shops, right?
You think
gross.
back now, it's how disgusting that was. You know, but what choice did you have?
Well, you go into the shop, and it was not a problem if you were the first guy to use it. But when you got to the end, that towel head was just filthy nasty. And the company who provided the service, the linen service, usually replaced that, which I feel so bad for those guys having to replace those. So we've done away with those. We've gone to roll towel dispensers. And now the most common is a hands-free roll towel, where literally it has a sensor. You put your hand in it, it gives you a sheet of paper. And those have the ability to adjust the length, how much paper you're going to get. Some companies are going to be more frugal and say you only get this much, so you got to run your hand over it half a dozen times. They have a lot of different ability to change the settings on that, how long it takes in between feeding of towels, how long of a towel itself you got. And keep this in mind. If you become too frugal with this, where you have the settings where it's a long delay or very short towel, what are people going to do if they don't have a towel? Nelson, I see you.
They're going to destroy it, get their towel out, dry their hands.
Either that, or they're going to like this and flick their hands. And it's not pretty. And as a custodian janitor, last thing you want is that. Them either damaging the dispenser to get into the towels, or them just splashing water everywhere because they don't have towels. So make sure they have a supply of towels and that they have enough to do what they need to do. Nelson.
When I go to Walmart and go to their restroom, it's nice and clean, but the paper towel is so hard to pull out because of the spiral that they use. And now what they're doing, they leave the door open, so you just pull out your own paper towel.
Yep. And one of those, so what Nelson's referring to is something called a center pull towel dispenser. And what that was designed to do is it had the roll of towels, so it was a round roll, right? But the towel itself dispenses out through the center. And when you pull it, you get a rag that you have to kind of open up to get the towel, which to me is a terrible idea. I don't know why the manufacturers came up with those style towels. The other problem with them is as they dispense out, they actually create a lot of dust. So if you're the custodian cleaning and you have center pull towel dispensers, remember to periodically clean your dispenser. And that's the part I want to address is in relation to these dispensers, so toilet paper dispensers, the paper towel dispensers, the hand soap. Not only is it important for you to replace the supplies and keep them stocked, but it's also important to keep them clean. So if somebody's touching it, you want to make sure that it's disinfected. If the towel dispensers over time, you'll get a lot of dust on the inside. Take your backpack vacuum and vacuum out the inside to get all that dust and debris out of there. I actually, when we do the steam cleaning, one of the things we'll do is we will steam clean the dispensers to make sure we get all that debris out of there. It's just a very sanitary way of getting rid of that. Another hand towel type of system or hand drying system is hand dryers. Hand dryers blow warm air on your hands. Everybody knows you go into McDonald's and it's got the sensor. You put your hands underneath there to dry it off. But again, if that's the case, where's a lot of that water going? Anybody?
On the floor? Or
on the floor. Yep, it's blowing that on the floor. Yeah. So then you had Dyson, who came out with something, and we all think of Dyson as a vacuum cleaner company, but Dyson was one of the companies who came out with hand dryers. And if you go into a lot of airports, I know Colorado, where I used to fly in and out of a lot, all their restrooms use the Dyson hand dryers. And you put it in, and it has a trough at the bottom so that the water, instead of going on the floor, goes into that trough. And you put it in, and it's a high volume of air, and it also has a slight amount of heat to that. So it dries your hands very quickly. You put it in, pull your hand out. But keep in mind, another area that we need to keep clean. And you typically, there's a training of how to empty that trough where the water goes into so that it doesn't have a buildup of that and create some issues that way. Mark.
Yeah, I know at the since the COVID started at the airport in San Fran, they shut down all those type of, all the air dryer hand dryers and put back paper towels.
Yeah. Hands-free paper towel dispensers, much more sanitary. And our book brings out a point, and I'll just read it directly from that. There's some debate about whether paper towels, linen towels, or electric hand dryers are more sanitary. Some claim that the air supply disperses germs during the drying process. Regardless, most would agree that the important thing is that restrooms or shower room patrons are encouraged to wash their hands thoroughly with soap and water. If that gets done, either drying method should be satisfactory. And I would agree, but my preference is a paper towel. Give people enough of a towel to properly dry their hands. And I'm old school. I was taught use that towel also after you've dried your hands to open the door with. So just a simple thing. And you put your garbage can in place so you have a place to throw the towel after opening. So hand soaps. So most restrooms, you're going to deal with hand soaps. Liquid hand soaps are the most common, right? Something to just keep in mind when it comes to hand soaps. You're going to hear terms like antimicrobial, antibacterial, those things. And antibacterial just means that the soap itself has an ingredient in it that helps to kill bacteria. Here's an interesting thing, folks. 2 minutes of hand washing with just traditional liquid hand soap will kill and remove bacteria. Okay, you don't have to use antibacterial. In fact, antibacterial hand soaps have an ingredient in it that will dry out your skin. That's why if you notice in healthcare environments, a lot of times they will have hand lotion dispensers for the nursing staff because they're washing their hands so much that they need to use that. So just be aware of it, that hand soaps, just proper hand washing along with the traditional lotion soap is perfectly fine. Just wash your hands for a couple of minutes. You're good to go. You don't need the antibacterials. And along those lines, hand sanitizer. Okay. Hand sanitizer is good for a quick interim kill. It is not going to replace hand washing. And the reason being, hand washing, by agitating it and putting it under warm water with a little bit of soap there, does something that hand sanitizer can't. It helps to remove the dead skin cells and soil on your hands. Hand sanitizer doesn't remove it. It kills things, but it also has a negative effect. It will dry your skin out. So if you're going to use hand sanitizer, perhaps use one that has like aloe in it so it doesn't dry your skin out as much. Most hand sanitizers are made with alcohol. They have started to use hand sanitizers made with quartz, much like a disinfectant. But again, the most effective way for cleaning our hands is proper hand washing. So our job, make sure that those dispensers are stocked and filled, replaced with what they need, and kept clean. If they have a lever or a push or something like that, make sure that that's disinfected, right? Kill the germs on it. Now, the last item that is part of our responsibility in a women's restroom has to do with the sanitary napkin receptacles, right? And those are usually a box that's either mounted on the wall or sitting on the floor that has a liner in it of some sort, so that sanitary napkins and those things are put in there, because you never want to have somebody flush those down a toilet. It'll clog it. They're not meant to be broken up through water that way. So remember, that's another area. Not only do you want to replace the liner, but you also want to use a good disinfectant there, because people are touching it. It is obviously a dirty area, so we want to make sure we keep it clean. It's an area that can create odors, so using a good disinfectant cleaner will resolve that issue. So, and the other thing that you may have to do if you're dealing with a public restroom, you may also have to refill dispensers where they're selling of sanitary napkins, tampons, or condoms. So if that's the case, your supervisor or manager would typically give you a supply for that to refill it. They may actually ask you to get the change out from people who pay for that, and that's given back to the facility to help offset their costs on it. I think a lot of places have gone away from charging it, but I think still a lot of cities were using it. But again, I would imagine during COVID, a lot of that stuff was shut down because they didn't want to be dealing with people buying, having those things to deal with. So, all right. So those are the supplies of a restroom. The paper supplies. The thing I didn't touch on was garbage can liners. And a simple thing about garbage can liners. Our book talks about two different types, what's called low density or linear low density, and high density liners. An easy way of thinking of this, if you look at a liner and it is the crinkly clear type of plastic, that is a high density liner. It is designed to hold a lot of weight, but you would want to be careful that you don't get anything sharp in it, because a high density liner, when you poke it, it will split apart because of the type of plastic it uses. On the other hand, if we think of the Glad bags, the big heavy duty black bags, those are designed in such a way that they can hold a lot of weight. They stretch a little bit more, but they're also a lot more expensive to make. We need a lot more oil to make those with. So that's why a lot of companies have gone to the high density liners, especially for office receptacle cans and restroom liners. That's the most common that they will use. So the only thing I recommend is, because of that, be careful that if it's got a something sharp in there, or it's inclined to have sharp things put in it, switch away from the high density and go to a low density, even though it costs more. Because if you poke a low density, those thicker bags, they won't split apart. It'll puncture, but it won't split. Okay. So, and if you're not sure which one you're using, on the box, it will say HD or LD. Okay. Alex, your comment.
Saying actually, sir, I hate to interrupt. I need to leave for something personal.
Okay. Thank you, Alex.
Can I, is there these will be available on, the recordings will be available on Google Classroom later, right?
Yes. Yep. It will probably be available. I'll post it over the weekend.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. So the liners, a couple other things to be of note on them. If you're using garbage can liners, which you should, remember to tie them off in such a way that they don't slip down into the can. Okay. And a real simple way of doing that is pull it outside the can. Your liner should overlap the can by about an inch or two. So you pull it over and then you pull it snug. And then what you can do is tie it in such a way that it's not going to slip down into the can. The other thing in regards to this is if you're using liners in a can, what I tell people is don't double up the thickness of the liner in the can. If you're having to do that, you've got too thin of a liner. It's a waste of liners and it's expensive. The other thing to be aware of, in a restroom, garbage can liners should be replaced every time you clean. Yes, it may not be full, but it is where people are throwing wet paper towels in there typically. So replace those every time it's cleaned. Every day it should be replaced, and sometimes more than that. The other thing about liners is clean the can regularly. It's not enough just to remove the liner. Make sure your garbage can or receptacle is kept clean. A lot of times the outside as well as the top will get funky looking. It shows a poor cleaning. And as Ken says, it's also going to start smelling, especially if people are throwing food debris like cups or food into those garbage cans. If for any reason the liner leaked, you got debris, wash it out, take it outside, wash out your can so that it is, kept clean. So, all right, that covers all of the supplies. There was a lot in this. One of the things I'm going to encourage you to do to simplify for yourself on your project when you're dealing with chemicals, identify the basic daily chemicals that you would use and try and keep it simple. If you're using green cleaning systems, you may find a way that you can be using just one product that can do most of your daily cleaning with. So that should help you. An assignment for you is moving into next week. We are going to cover on Monday the restroom cleaning procedures. Okay. What I'd like to see you guys do is to use in your book the 14, it's got a list of 20 different things that you could write down from restroom care. It says to write down your steps to proper restroom care. But from that standpoint, you guys should be able to outline and write down each of those steps. So that's going to be your assignment, is to do that. Here's what I'm going to do. Monday's class, when we cover restroom cleaning, I am going to call on each and every person in the class and ask them some of those steps. And I'll randomly ask it. I'm not going to go in order. So going to kind of quiz you guys a little bit. Make sure you guys are familiar with those, because those steps should be included also in your restroom cleaning procedures for your building. Okay, so it's a simple way. This one is very clear. Now, I'm going to point out something, and I'll address it at the beginning here before we deal with it on Monday, because I don't want to confuse anybody. The last step in restroom cleaning, you will notice, is inspecting a restroom. All right. This is now me speaking from personal experience, not as what the book says. I think that's a crazy step to put at the end, because frankly, I don't like to walk on a wet floor. So my last step is actually to mop a floor. I put inspecting number 13. That's me personally. It's not what the book says. In fact, on your testing, it will ask you, what is the final step in cleaning a restroom? According to the book, it is to inspect the restroom. So I don't want to confuse anybody. I just, it's my personal, and I'm telling you guys this from a practical standpoint. So sometimes we have to understand what the procedures are from the training, but then we need to look at this and look at practical application. And practical application is, think about it. You've done everything. You've done all your stuff, clean the restroom, stock the supplies. Last thing you should do is inspect it and then mop your floors as you come out. Mark, go ahead.
I've observed the janitorial service over in San Francisco when I was in the break room, when they do their stuff that they need to do, particularly the bathrooms that you speak of, their supervisor would come in, not all the time, but occasionally come in and go inspect afterwards, after they just got out of there doing what they're doing.
Yeah.
So I don't know, maybe that's where that comes from. I don't know.
But what it's referring to is the person cleaning should inspect their own work. And that makes sense. You should inspect your work before your boss has to. Part of what supervisors or managers have to do is they need to also periodically inspect work. I did a lot of cleaning inspections for facilities over the years. But I train people, and ISSA does as well, that you should be. So just keep it clean. So that's your assignment, to be prepared for Monday. I will point out, I'm going to share one thing with you guys in our Google Classroom, which I should have. Let me get it up here. Hang on. I had it up here, but I'm going to pull it up real quick, guys. In our Google Classroom, and that's what I'm looking here for. Okay. I posted something for you guys, and it is a couple simple training videos. So let me share my screen so I can share that with you guys. So in the Google Classroom, under basic cleaning of restrooms, under restroom cleaning videos, there's a couple videos that will help you as you look at procedures. One of them involves using a restroom cleaning machine. The other is just some basic steps. This does not list it as the according to that particular contractor, that was the steps they wanted covered in their list of steps. So the reality is, there are times where you can combine steps, and that's what they did, is they combined some of the steps. So just wanted you guys to know that that was available there. Take a look at it, and then if you guys have any questions, feel free. All right, that wraps up today's class. Monday is procedures. Okay, remember, we do not have class next Wednesday. It will be Thursday. So be aware of that. And then we'll have Friday will be our session.
Recording stopped.
That session is going to be in relation to job coaching. Okay. Resumes, applications, Cal jobs, and those things. So we'll have a guest speaker on next week on Friday. On Thursday's class, it is mainly going to be your guys is working on your project. And to that extent, that's when I'll also be trying to help you guys a lot with your projects. So if you guys have questions or things that you're struggling with on your projects, that's when on Thursday, I want to help you as much as possible. Okay. That wraps up today's class. We're getting to next week as our last full week. We finish up our last session on cleaning on Monday. So that's where we're kind of done on the cleaning process. And a lot of you guys are pretty close to done on your testing. Good job with that. Not much left to do here. So really excited about what we've done. So anybody have any questions before we wrap up today?
Yes, Dave, you were telling me to remind you what we was talking about the green process solution.
Could not find it.
It's on page 120.
Let me take a look here. Thank you. All right, let's help everybody with that one. Okay.
All right.
So remind everybody the question, first of all, that's on the test.
What was, let me find it. A green process incorporate all of the following except.
Okay.
Reduce the chemical use, reduce chemical related to injury, increase the amount of hand scrubbing to reduce the chemical use.
Yep. And so if you guys saw that on your test, it gave you the question and you had to choose which one was not true. What is the except, right? And on page 120, the first bullet point, thank you for finding that, Nelson. A reduction in the scrubbing required because moist heat quickly penetrates, loosens embedded soils and porous surfaces like grout. The statement in the book or on the test says increase the amount of hand scrubbing. So that would not be true. That's the exception. So we were looking for that the other day. Nelson was asking me, where is this? And I didn't know exactly where it's at because I'm not given an answer key. So there's a few of these that over the last year or two, I've had to, with the help of my students, find exactly the answer. I knew it just from common sense, but where's it at in the book? So good job, Nelson.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right. So, and Nelson's wrapping up his testing as well. I know a lot of you guys are done or will be done with just one last one to be done. So great job with everybody. It's been fun working with all of you guys. So the last thing to put on your plate to think about is if anybody wants to kind of discuss what they got as a benefit out of this class or how they're going to use that. Why don't we plan on next Thursday having a little bit of time to discuss that? Because I'd like to be able to allow you guys the opportunity to share your thoughts with our guests on our graduation day. It's always a fun portion of the class. So, all right, any other questions or thoughts? Not, have a good weekend, guys, and I will see everybody on Monday morning.
And happy Easter, everybody.
Exactly. All right, enjoy, guys.